Hello, Double GDP community. It's great to be with you. This is Jay and Nolan here, calling from Lusaka, recording from Lusaka, Zambia. And we have just finished a wonderful trip with our friends at Nkwashi, about 10 days. And we want to share with you updates and highlights and progress that we've made from the trip.
In fact, we're just coming from our wrap-up dinner with the customer team, which was fantastic. Lamb chops and mashed potatoes.
Lamb chops and mashed potatoes.
But it was a nice way to. That was a nice way to wrap up all of our interaction with them, and so it seemed like a good time for us to kind of connect back with the broader team and community and tell a little bit of the story.
Great. So we thought the best way to do this would be to actually just share the presentation that we went through with Nkwashi, wrapping up all of our work. We have added just a little bit for the broader community, and we have taken away a little bit also for the broader community. We have added a slide with some pictures to share some highlights, and we've covered up any personally identifying information from the system. So I'll share that with you now. And this is our slide deck. So we went through trip wins and next steps of the partnership between Nkwashi and Double GDP. So let's start with some photographs. Jay, you want to narrate?
Yeah, I mean, look, this trip was about, I think, three things. It was first and foremost about the deployment of all the working software that we built on WGDP over the last couple of months, and so deployment looked like training guards, and it looked like training staff, and it looked like bringing the software out to users and getting feedback from them, and rapidly working with our team back, with our development team here in Zambia and our team back in the U.S. to make changes based on that feedback and all that kind of stuff. So, like, if you look in the in the far kind of like middle right hand side of this of this page, you see like we were out on site at Nkwashi printing out ID cards that were like the physical embodiment of the digital application that we had. So that was like one part. And then like the second part of that this trip really had a lot involved on, right? Like in addition to rolling out the software, it was deep customer engagement, right? So that was all about spending a lot of rich time with our clients and getting to know them, right? And if you think about who Double GDP's customer is, like we work with the people who are running new communities, right? And so that our customers are the site operations managers and the marketing communications folks who can basically go out and build connections with new potential residents and actual residents of these new communities, the finance teams, the payments teams, all that kind of stuff, right? And so we just spent like really rich time with each of those individual stakeholders, doing one-on-one interviews, giving them individual trainings of the working application, getting them their accounts and getting feedback from them on how things were working, and building out like both bug lists as well as kind of like feature requests and all that kind of stuff. And so that was really cool. You see one example in the upper right-hand corner of Nolan talking to one of the members of the team there, the site operations lead, about what it was going to take actually to go and roll this software out, and actually like get his, the folks who report to him, right, all the guards and all the people who are running security on the staff, using the software. And then finally, right, we spend a bunch of time trying to understand our customers' customers, and those are the prospective residents of this new community. So we ran a whole bunch of in-home interviews with the kind of like the pioneering first residents of this community. Each of those was like about 3 hours long. We had another design researcher in from out of town helping us to run those interviews so that I could work more with Nolan to actually do a lot of the application deployment, and just like a lot of rich customer interaction. So you see a little bit more of that throughout some of the other photos on this slide, where you see some of the in the lower left-hand corner, you see some of the guards getting trained, and in the middle of that, some of the other people kind of like coming through, and actually like on the weekends at Nkwashi, they do a big picnic for current and prospective clients, and so that's a little example of what that sort of looked like. And then finally, we were there to really understand the broader connections of the community. So we drove through a lot of the different parts of Lusaka, and we spent good time at the beautiful, beautiful site of Inkwashi, which is in the upper left-hand corner there.
Yeah. And what you're seeing here at Inkwashi is looking in, it's a view of the park, which is sort of the centerpiece of the town to be, with the restaurant building that they have there, which is also the place where they host the picnics every weekend. And it's looking out over the dam. And the water level at the dam right now is at about 4 meters. And they say that in a couple of months, as we near the end of the rainy season, that water is going to be at a good 12 meters. So that's going to be a very different look very soon.
And before you move on, Nolan, one of the interesting things, like I don't know about you, but for months I've seen the way that Inkwashi in their marketing communications talks about the dam, and I'd seen some of the photos of the development of it as being like a really critical infrastructure investment that they were making. One of the early things that they were doing to build up the community, and in my head I thought, okay, cool, amazing, really important infrastructure investment. But I had what could never have been clear to me until I came out and actually sat in the living rooms of the future residents of Inkwashi, was what that dam actually indicated to this community. And what that dam actually indicates to the future kind of like pioneering residents of Inkwashi is water security. There is highly variable access to water, and highly variable support from the municipal water services all throughout Lusaka. And when people look at this particular town, they're looking at they're looking for like orderly, very carefully taken care of, very organized operations, and that includes all the utilities. And that dam is a indicator of like people's of the fact that like there will actually be very consistent utility services in this community. It's just a huge value proposition, like selling point for them. So could have never known until I was actually a part of this community how important that was.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to resist the urge to make any dam puns and move on. So the agenda that we went through with Inkwashi and that we'll go through with you, we want to talk about some of the highlights this trip, where we are with the process and what the capability of the process is today, some short-term opportunities, things that we want to tackle in the next weeks and maybe a couple of months, and then some of the things we talked about working together with Inkwashi beyond this. So some of the wins this trip, we have a digital identification and security process in place. We have demonstrated that, and guards have shown that they are running the system. In fact, we've been seeing check-ins
all day long,
and it's great to sort of ping them. How many check-ins have we had now? Probably on the order of like 10, 15.
We just had like 2 more in the last like hour and a half, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's relatively low traffic going in and out of the site now, and I think that was also one of the things that we learned as we got here, is that they have weekend trips and they have events that are a little bit higher traffic kinds of things, and we attended some of those picnics, so the ones that we happened to be at also were fairly small. But the daily traffic might actually just be 3 or 4, and then when there's a lot of construction going on, there might be a lot more. So it's interesting to see that the flow of traffic can be highly variable from day to day. But we'll certainly get more of a sense of it over the next weeks. But the guards they were just amazing. They were so welcoming, so eager, very enthusiastic about it. And one of the things that was just really great is that they talked about the feedback that we got after they left was that this is actually really exciting for them, and that they thought of this as professional development, that they are learning new skills. They liked getting the smartphone and seeing how that navigates. They mostly have been using phones that have a small screen, but just number pad on them. And so that was actually something that was a pleasant surprise, just seeing.
No, totally.
Yeah.
And from the very first training session that we had, it was not just training, it was actually, shouldn't it work this way? Here's how the process actually works. Maybe the app could have this instead, or this in addition. And so like I don't know, building that I don't know, the intersection of like rapport and feedback loop, right? And it's been quite effective for us.
Yeah, and it actually their feedback was so big in terms of the amount of process that we had to adjust on the application that it took several days to get to the place where we could actually redesign the process and the application to match that process to get back to them. But we did, and got there, and I think at the end they actually felt very happy with the feedback, with the process, and very proud that their feedback had an impact on it. So that felt wonderful. We also have an easy client enrollment process now, much easier than the one that when we started.
Completely redesigned in how many days?
Yeah. And that was sort of amazing. And real kudos to Mark on that one for what he designed there. We'll show you more about how that works a little bit later today. And then the other sort of great value proposition of this process in place is now that we have visibility for administrators. And there's all sorts of benefits that come from that down the road. But even just from the get-go, you know, one of the things that everybody has talked about is that they want to have more visibility into what's going on at the site. And I think one of the things, just to go back to where I was sort of 2 weeks ago, one of the big learnings is just how far the site is from Lusaka. It's not just sort of like a 10-minute drive, it's a good 30-minute drive going at full speed, and it feels even sort of more distant because the land that you're passing through is mostly open. It's gorgeous and beautiful and a really nice drive to get there, but it does feel like you're going into a different place. It's not just a suburb of Lusaka. And so for an administrator working on the Nkwashi project, they're mostly in Lusaka, and going to the site is not something they're doing every day. And so having visibility to who's coming and on the site also helps them stay connected with their mission, I think. You want to talk more about discovery with admin team and
yeah, I mean,
the research? You mentioned some of it.
I mentioned that briefly, but I think there were two parts to us digging in deeply with our customers, right? The sales team, the marketing team, the finance team, the site operations team, all that kind of stuff. Number one had to do with training and enrolling them in the use of the existing system. And the thing is, actually, for each of those groups, there's both a current use case and a near-term value proposition that is relevant to them, right? For marketing, there's an opportunity for them to get the word out to their customers about some new digital capabilities and a real changeover in terms of the ways that security is working at the site, because right now is when the first residents are going to be about moving to live in this new community. So there's a real opportunity for them to tell that story and have a new tool that is coming along with it, right? So we sort of like walked it through with them. Sales is a slightly different one. The opportunity for the near-term opportunity for them is actually to learn that a prospective client has come out to the site to capture their contact information and to do a really fast follow-up from a warm leads perspective to basically say, hey, did you have any questions? Can I tell you a little bit more? We came out of the weekend helping to support their weekend picnic with a number of warm leads that they would not have had tracked in the same way. We're able to kind of like pass a lead report over to the sales team on Monday morning. That was really exciting. On the one part, it's about like training the team on the existing application, taking some feedback and talking to them about how to like take advantage of that value proposition. On the other hand, it's about trying to better understand how, as our application grows in its a level of services, how it fits into their existing workflow, their existing systems that they're using, and what future opportunities we have for our roadmap. So we did a lot of discovery on that, walking through a lot of those systems, those technology systems, thinking a little bit about integration, thinking a little bit about honestly duplication and what like maybe we could do better if things were tuned more directly to their needs in terms of like, you know, real estate finance or communications on a growing construction site. Much more to share there in the coming weeks and months, I think, as our roadmaps gets fleshed out. But that was kind of the point. And then finally, as I mentioned, we did a bunch of in-home interviews with the clients of our customer, right? And so there were seven different 3-hour-long in-home interviews with the folks who are kind of like the pioneering residents of this community across a wide demographic set. Some younger, some older, some men, some women, some single, some married, some who will be moving in very, very shortly and might be one of the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to actually live on the site. Some who are, paying off their plots and also paying off other plots with other providers, and who knows, like may choose to rent their site at Inkwashi and move into another place. We use that as a real opportunity to just better understand a community that is, like far from where we live. And I think it's really important to spread that empathy for who our customers are through our whole team. I think it helps us get the value propositions right. It helps us get the messaging right. It helps us get the design right.
Yep. And I think this stuff is going to be foundational. We're not going to go into a lot of what we've learned from all of this today, but as we get back and do more analysis of it, we still have hours of video to go through, and we'll be getting a report from our other design researchers. So a wealth of information yet to come on those 2 projects. And of course, the discovery with the admin team, a lot of that is also stuff that we're still synthesizing, and we're going to need to discuss and sort of figure out how that affects the product that we want to build. But really foundational stuff there. So getting a little bit more near term, let's talk about what we have in place today. We have a digital entry log at the gate. We have a digital identification that is available for all Inkwashi clients, prospective clients, contractors, anybody who's a member of the Inkwashi community in any kind of extended way. I think the way we talked about it is that anybody that has gone to the site or expects to go to the site more than 2 or 3 times can have a digital identification, and the access rights that they have to the site can then be controlled through a system, regardless of what that ID is. So they have an ID, and then that ID stays with the person, but the access privileges can be changed and evolved over time. We have a very easy way to enroll clients in it, and we have a basic lead generation process for people who are visiting the site, who today have not been sort of necessarily brought back into the lead generation process. What does that look like? We have some gray boxes here. We've crossed out any kind of identifying information here. Mr. Thomas Jones that you see here is an avatar that we've been using for design. But what we have in place, an entry log that shows every user that comes, and every person with a digital ID who shows up at the gate, and everybody who shows up at the gate, even if they're unidentified, they enter the log, and then there's a log of their entry as well with their information. Digital identification, the access privileges, what we're showing here right now, it's a manual process where somebody can, and we have the wrong, oh no, sorry. You can either be valid and have access to the site, or your privileges can be expired or not allowed. And that's something that right now an administrator can do at an individual level, one at a time. And over time, we might grow into having more kinds of permissions or temporary access for 24 hours, or say that people can access the site from Monday to Friday between certain hours or something like that. So we have the basics in place there. And then lead tracking, this is a report that Jay put together based on the picnic to bring back to the sales team and share with them who has joined. Just a little overview of what that looks like at different for different roles. The security guard, this is their home page. They can scan and they can do a manual log. And then they can see the entry logs of what has taken place. So scanning visitors, anybody that has a digital ID, they can open their scanner and do that. And then they can create a digital log for visitors without a digital ID. On the next page, we can show you what that looks like. This is the scan page here. Sorry. Oh, actually, we don't have a picture of the scanner, but you'd go in and it just opens up a QR code reader. And then this is the kind of information that's being requested on if you log in at the gate. If you do that, you then the guard requests entry. That sends a text message to the head of security, Poniso, and the guard gets a message saying waiting on approval. That then turns into green or red when the approval is granted. You want to talk about the client?
Yeah, so for clients or prospective clients coming through the site, so these are the people who either live there, are building there, or want to come and check out the site to make a decision about whether they're going to buy a plot. They now, previously they all accessed the gate basically through a sticker that they had to go through the home offices in Lusaka and like purchase. So now all of them can access the Inkwashi gate through a digital ID. The way that it ends up working is that digital ID is sent to them by the home office, by anybody who's basically giving them permission to kind of go out there. So you use the digital ID on your mobile device instead of that. You can also request a physical ID that can be printed at the Inkwashi office. Works exactly the same way. And there's ways to manage your contact information via mobile.
And one of the things that, as we were sort of rolling this out with clients, one of the things that they talked about was some of the reactions we got were, oh, cool, which is good. Yeah. But also, yeah, this will save me a lot of time coming into the gate because I don't have to fill out a manual logbook anymore. And then I think, in addition, there was a great sense of security. I mean, very commonly the reaction was like, oh, good, I'm glad to see this progress. It makes me feel safer coming to the site and happier with my relationship with Inkwashi. So that was very gratifying to hear. We have a single-click enrollment process now where when you create a new ID for somebody, you can send them a one-time passcode that shows up as a text message for them. They click the link and they're automatically logged in to that application. And then this is what their ID looks like on the phone. For administrators, they now have access to be able to see the entries on the site. They can easily enroll clients via the SMS, and they can follow up with prospects after a visit to the site. And I think that's just a really powerful connection. A few screenshots of what it looks like. Here are the entry logs that they get. Not so great on this screen, but you can imagine a lot more interesting when you can see the names. And then from here, this is what the edit user page looks like, and they can print an ID card here or send the one-time passcode from that app from the mobile app. So short-term opportunities. So that's an overview of sort of where the application is today. Yeah. And of course, there's a whole bunch of things that we want to do in the near term. Some of it is just sort of tightening some loose ends and sort of even paying down some technical debt that we accrued as we were sort of rapidly iterating the product in this week to make it work. I think there are still some edges now that are a little rough, and we'll go through some of that stuff. We have a process in place, but not yet a lot of oversight of the process itself or ability to know how well that's working or looking for improvements in it. So just creating some better oversight of the security process, I think, will be good to help us iterate and grow from there. And then we need to build some redundancy around potential choke points. So some that we've already identified are, right now there's one person who can approve or request access to the site. But if his phone is off or he's out of data, that's a potential choke point. We have an escalation in that case, but that adds time and latency in the process. There's also issues with data. There could be power issues. There's a variety of other things. And you want to make your observation about sort of the software and hardware combination working together. I thought that was really insightful.
Yeah, so Nolan and I were having this conversation earlier today. We were basically saying I think it's one thing to be a software as a service company working in the developed world, in most of the developed world, and that software. And I think my observation was that when software as a service companies go to emerging markets, and this is we're here in one. Any software as a service company, SaaS company, also quickly becomes a hardware company in some sort of way, because you've got to actually you have to create the physical infrastructure that the developed world already has there for you, right? And so this is we need to support hardware that's going to actually create more stability around power, right? Like batteries, generators, and all that kind of stuff. That make sure that power is there when you need it. The stability around internet connectivity. The stability around like cell phone top-ups and all that kind of stuff that are much less of a question in some, or that I'm going to say that software as a service companies take for granted in many other markets, but can't take it for granted when they're growing into this one.
Yeah, so I think redundancy and resiliency are probably two themes that we're going to need to be thinking about a lot as the partnership grows. When we talk about enrolling existing clients and prospects, of course, we have a way to do that now, but it's relatively at an individual level. And so I think doing that en masse and getting everybody loaded, but also figuring out the messaging around that and how you communicate that with in a bigger setting, I think it will require some care and some working closely with Inkwashi to make sure that that's done in a way that is presented in the right way, where when you're doing it on a one-on-one basis, the reaction is very cool. This is awesome. We want to make sure that when we roll it out in bulk, we get that same kind of reaction as well. Working in the showroom. So we have gate access, but there's a few other places where people could be logging in. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. We've identified a warehouse. There's another gate at the Inkwashi site. There's a showroom. There are a few other places that we sort of have on the radar that might be interesting spots. So I think each of those has a slightly different use case than the main gate. And so we'll need to adjust a little bit as we think about broadening the footprint. But all of those are also near-term opportunities that we could do to have more impact in terms of the way that we're thinking about identification and security.
Totally.
Improving lead generation and harnessing, bringing that information back to marketing and sales, designing an event management process. So when we think about 1,000 people coming to the site right now, right now the event probably checking in at the gate is probably a 3 to 5 minute process, depending on sort of how long it takes to get back to Poniso, and that's fine when when this very few people are there. When you're thinking about bulk, we're going to need to have a more efficient process and more guards and sort of have it something. We're going to have to tweak that. And that's probably in March. Did we say April? So in March, we'll be needing to sell the tickets, and in April, the event will take place. So we have a little bit of time, but that's something on our radar. And then one of the other sort of insights that we got here is that because of all of this physical infrastructure and a lot of the logistics of sort of navigating here, it really is, it takes a lot of time to get something done. I think it took us something like 3 or 4 hours, I guess 2 hours waiting, 3 hours just to get SIM cards for all of the phones that we wanted to get set up. And so just seeing the sort of number of those kinds of lessons that we've learned, I think it's important that we have some sort of double GDP representative that's going to be based here in Inkwashi. So we're starting to think about that job description and recruit candidates for that, so that we have somebody that is a customer success manager or even administrative support, and we'll figure out a little bit more about the sort of mission of that role over time. But I think that's going to be a valuable addition to the team and to the way that we can serve Inkwashi. And this probably is less interesting to the overall community. I think these are many of the best practices, but we spent some time here talking about what that means in the context of working together, and just trying to set expectations about the way that we would like to receive information and provide information back, and just sort of how we sort of the fundamentals of building an effective partnership together. That's it.
I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So Nolan and I are wrapping up at least our collective trip #1 to go see this customer. We pack up this evening. We head off tomorrow, and I think we're shaking it up as a trip well spent, a successful rollout, and a darn good time. So
yeah, and it's been really just at a personal level, it's been so wonderful to make the relationships with the Inkwashi team. It's just a really inspiring group of people with a really powerful mission, and not just the team themselves, but the extended community and the relationships that we formed with the guards and the residents that we met, and the research. I mean, it's just been, I have felt so welcomed in this country, and I feel very, very warmly towards Zambia. So to all of the Zambians in the community, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful.
Cool. That's great.